Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of sewing a single item in a large quantity. So you can do this with any pattern that you choose, but for this video and this illustration, I have chosen the Salina dress pattern. This is a pretty versatile dress. You can sew it for a variety of different seasons depending on the fabrics and colors that you choose. But the great thing is it's only 3 pattern pieces. It does have a set for the outer layer and a set for the lining, but it's a very simple bodice and skirt that are sewn together. The nice part about this dress pattern is that inside the waistline is an elastic casing, which makes it fit a variety of the 18-inch doll that could be stuffed differently in that cloth body. So it's a great one to have to sell and just be sure that it will fit any doll that the customer might have. Here are a few examples of a Salina dress, and this one is sewn for a BFC ink doll, which is an 18-inch doll, but she's a little bit slimmer than an American Girl. We do have this pattern available for a variety of sizes, 18-inch, the 14.5-inch Willy Wisher or Hearts for Hearts dolls. There's a Girl for All Time, BFC, Kids and Cats, and Journey Girls. So whether you're sewing for any of those dolls, this project can work for all of them. So you can see here we have a couple different options. One is a Salina dress that's sewn with the same bodice and skirt fabric. It's not sheer, but we've still lined it because of the method of construction and how we put in the elastic casing. Now in this example, this is a sheer fabric on top of a lining. So you can do this with like lace or any chiffon or silky type fabrics, even mesh or like sparkly mesh, that kind of stuff. And then with those, you could even not hem that over layer. You could just cut it a little bit shorter or let it hang a little bit longer than the lining for a unique look. Another variation within that pattern is to sew it as a top, and that is just a shorter skirt portion, but the instructions for it are the same. So you could mix those in with your large quantity bulk sewing, just keep the right pieces together. Another great pattern for this, especially with the holidays coming up soon, is the Aspen party dress. This one I really like to do in bulk if you choose mesh type fabrics, because the mesh and the tulle and certain lining fabrics that are Lycra 4-way stretch fabrics don't require hemming. So you can cut all these out and sew them fairly quickly. The only notion required for this would be Velcro on the back, or you could even use a snap closure. So there's not a lot of notions needed, and this one goes together quickly and is a great one for sort of that holiday, Christmas theme, New Year's, any of that type of holiday dress, and you can mix and match with fabrics and sparkly and that kind of stuff. So this is a great one to stock in your Etsy shop that's fast and easy to sew. Now you can see here I have a stack of woven cotton fabrics. Some of them are a lightweight lawn or even a rayon blend fabric. But I'm going to choose these ones right here. With the way these all look on the outside, I'm comfortable sewing them all with white thread and a white bobbin thread. So that means I can cut them all out at the same time and then sew them all at the same time, and I don't have to change my thread. So the tools needed for the Salina dress project are the pattern pieces cut out. This one has just 2 pattern pieces for the bodice. It's the same piece for the fabric and the lining, front and back. And then the skirt is just rectangular measurement. So once we have our fabric laid out, we can measure that and cut that with just using our straight edge ruler. So the other thing that's important is the rotary cutter, and I have 2 right here that I'll use. Most frequently I use this small one, which is a 28mm blade, and this one has a retractable cover that you have to manually put off and on. So this one honestly would not be my best recommendation, just because I've cut myself pretty severely on this one because I've left it like this. Fabric got piled on top of it, and I went to scoop everything up and it just went right into my hand and cut pretty bad. So this one, if you're sure that you're gonna make your cover slide back and forth, is great. It's really good for these little armholes. So the t-shirts and the dresses, using this little rotary cutter in these areas is really preferred over something larger like this. But this one right here, which is a 45mm blade, has a handle that you have to push for the blade to be exposed. So if you're not holding this handle down, the blade retracts automatically and you can't cut yourself. So this one is a great one for the multi-purpose use. It's great for cutting larger pieces and straight lines and all of those types of things. And then a very hard plastic acrylic ruler is great, and of course a cutting mat. Now another thing I'm going to note for this project, I have 3 fabrics that I've chosen that are yardage. So I have quite a bit of these. I'm going to make sure that they're flat and pressed, and then we will fold these for double thickness exactly with the folds lined up across the mat. So I'm going to do that with these 3, and I can cut them all out at the same time. With these 2 right here, these are actually dress shirts. So I bought these at a local discount store, but the fabric was so cute that I knew it would be great for doing dresses. So both of these are like that. So you can see right here, these are men's button-up dress shirts. And the material is a great quality. It's a nice quality fabric for both. So I'll go ahead and cut the seams on these so that I have the fabric from the back probably as my main piece, and I'll begin working with that, which I can lay that pretty wide and get most of this cut out of just the back section. Here I have the fabric on the board, and I have it pinned, I have it clipped here with these Wonder Clips just to hold it tight. This is folded double thickness, and I have 2 pieces, and then I have here these 2 pieces that were cut from the back of the shirt, and I know I need 20 inches across for the 18-inch size. So I have these laying 1 layer of fabric, and I'm just going to go ahead. This was my smallest one, so I'll put that one on the top. I'm just going to set these up here and just make sure that they're straight, that the pattern lines up. So you just want to press really firmly, make sure that you're holding this ruler nice and tight, and you're guiding your blade right along the ruler. We have a nice straight edge right here. And then we want 7 inches down. And my ruler is not quite wide enough for this whole piece. So I have another one here that I am just going to make sure that I have my end here lined up. And I'm going to press firmly across this, and I'm going to cut my 7 inches. And then I could go ahead and do that one more time, and I'll have quite a few skirts. So if I'm going to do 7 inches, and then I'm going to cut another 7 inches. And then here I have 2 sections of skirts, so it's cut through all the layers. Then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I have these cut at 20 inches wide. So I have my 4 single layers. So I'm just laying these on top of each other. I'm going to cut off the salvages, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut these all 20 inches wide. And once I have one piece cut, I can go ahead and even just use this as my guide as I go ahead and cut the rest. So I'll just keep stacking them on top of each other, using this right here just as basically as my pattern piece. And I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure I have those all cut. You can see I'm left with some pieces that are not quite long enough, so I'm just going to go ahead and save these. I can either cut the bodice out of this, or I can save these for a smaller doll that might not need a 20-inch wide gathered skirt. Now we have these scrap pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out bodices to go with these skirts. I have 6 layers of fabric right here, and this is all very lightweight, so I'm just going to line up the folds. I'm going to put these on here. Now we can either pin or just hold this. Now because these are a little bit slippery, I'm just going to pin it. But like I mentioned in the earlier videos, the pinning is a little bit, it will slow you down a little bit. But with these tight little arm curves, it's nice to have at least a few pins to secure the fabric so it's not slipping around. So So that right there seems good, and then I know that I can fit the back, which is right here. I'm gonna place it upside down and it fits nicely right tucked inside. So I can get all of those layers cut out. So I'll have 3 sets of bodices to go with the 3 skirts that I already cut out. And then for the ones that I cut out of the shirts, I'll just cut those out separately. Now I'm gonna use this little rotary cutter and I'm just gonna cut right around my pattern piece edges. So here we have the bodice front and the bodice back cut out. We've got 6 layers of fabric here, so we're pretty close. Now we're just gonna cut out the bodices for these and then we'll go ahead and sew them all. Here I have all my pieces cut out. So I have the bodice pieces cut from the pattern pieces, and then the skirt pieces are cut from the rectangular measurements. So I have a few sets of different colors. I have the gray, I have the blue, I have the bright print, and then I have the floral print. So I have them spread out right here so you can see they're kind of stacked in order, the same order of this is the bodice back, over here is the bodice front, and then over here I have linings, and I have a light pink lining and I have a white lining. So I'm going to line the floral and the bright one in the pink, and then I'm going to use the white on the blue and the gray. So all of this can be sewn with white thread and a white bobbin and white Velcro. If I wanted to use different color Velcros, I could at the end, but I can do white on all of these and it will look fine. So it'll be a fast process through the machine. We're gonna line up all the pieces and follow the steps in the pattern that are laid out for the Welly Wishers or Kids and Cats, A Girl for All Time, where you sew the bodice with the side seams enclosed. It's a little bit faster, a little bit different process than the original AG version, so be sure to look those over and see the differences. It's a little bit faster, streamlined process. So as we start, we are gonna take all of our bodices, we'll set the skirts aside for now. We're gonna take all of our bodice fronts and all of our bodice backs, and we're gonna match up shoulder seams. So we'll have shoulder seams matched up, and go ahead and just sew all the shoulder seams on the bodice front and back, and all the shoulder seams on all the linings. So we have pink front and back, and then we have white front and back. Now we've gone ahead and done all the shoulder seams on the bodices and the linings, and I've moved on to the skirts. So I'm still sitting at my machine doing all the sewing that I can do before I get up and go work on pressing. So we have these items right here that we've zigzagged, and if you have a serger, you can serge the edges of the skirt pieces. So you want to go around the short sides and the top long side. The bottom edge you're gonna hem, so you don't have to serge that unless you want to do a single fold hem. So once we've gone ahead and sewn that zigzag along this whole top edge, we're gonna hem the bottom pieces and then also sew 2 rows of gathering stitches on the skirt pieces, not the lining pieces. So there you can see we have 2 rows of straight stitches. It's the large stitch, so we can pull gathers across the top edge of the skirt. Then depending on your preference, you can go ahead and double turn the bottom edge of the skirt pieces and sew a hem along the edge. But if you'd like to skip that step and hem the bottom of the skirt after you sew the center back of the dress a little bit, it makes a cleaner hem. You can move that final step to the end when you finish your dress. Now we're just gonna take each skirt piece and gather it to fit the lining piece. So you can see here as I pull this across that the skirt piece is longer than the lining piece. So I'm just gonna secure it to the ends, then we'll gather it to fit, and then we'll just go ahead and baste those 2 layers together across the top, and we'll have them all prepped and ready to go to attach to the bodices. Here we have all of our bodices and all of the bodice linings all sewn at the shoulder seams. So now we just need to go ahead and lay them all open and press all these seams open. And then this is a good time to just really clean up and even out any of your cut lines. So sometimes when you're cutting in bulk, your fabrics have a little bit different resistance, or depending on how many you have stacked, you might have a little bit of inconsistency on the cut. So you might have a little bit wider shoulder seam on one front than a back or something like that. But it's pretty easy to just trim down, and you can clean up those necklines. You can also do that after you've sewn the lining to the bodice, and you trim your seams that way. Now that I have all of my shoulder seams pressed, I'm just stacking them with right sides together, a bodice and a lining, a bodice and a lining, and then I have a bodice and a lining, and they're right sides together. So I'm just gonna stack them all like this, bodice and lining, bodice and lining, and then my bodice and lining, and I'm gonna take these all over to the machine ready to sew. All right, I'm back at the machine, and here is my stack of bodices. And now for this part, I think the only part that I will make sure to pin is right here, this center front point. I'm just gonna line these up as closely as I can, and I'll just pin those all right at center front so that that doesn't get misaligned. And then the rest of it, I can guide through the machine holding this with my fingers. I can be sure that my shoulder seams are lined up and that my corners are lined up, since I'm just going around the neckline, and then I'm gonna turn it and just go around the arm's eye seam. So that is the process. We're gonna repeat that for all of the bodices that we have cut out. Then we'll just come in really carefully on these points and the curves, and we'll trim the seams down all at one time. You're gonna cut right here into this point so that that will turn nicely. You're gonna clip inside all of these arm's eye seams, and you can do that by notching into it, sort of like this. You can trim the seam down, grade the seam. Don't do it right here because you're going to need that seam allowance to sew this side seam in just a minute. But prior to that, you could cut these curves. Be sure to trim the bulk right here outside on that seam allowance, but don't cut through the stitching. That'll help when you turn it right side out through here. So you can trim along this pretty close, and then cut notches into this little curve side, and then continue down. But on this side again, don't cut that seam allowance about a 1/2 inch in, so we can sew this seam allowance up the side seam. Then you're just gonna go ahead and turn all the bodices right side out, which is pulling that back through the shoulder seam. Right here, you just pull that back piece through, and the shoulder seams should be wide enough. You should be able to do this fairly easy. That is a good reason to really watch your seam allowance when you're sewing, especially over the shoulder seam. But this one comes out. Pretty easily right here. So that's one side. And here we have that shoulder seam in the front. So you'll turn them all right side out, and then you will attach all the skirts to all of the bodices. And this is good too. You can save some of these types of things, like turning all the bodices right side out, to a different time if you're going to sit and watch TV or something like that, and you have a whole pile of these, and you can just do this as a different step outside of your project, and then come back and finish your project the next day. Clipping curves is the same kind of thing. You could save all of that to one sitting, one project time. All right, so at this point I have skirts ready to assemble. I have them gathered and sewn to the lining piece, and they're all basted. So I've got one of each right here. And then I have my bodices, which this one is turned right side out. I need to push the corners out and press this neckline, and then we'll top stitch on the neckline. But first we're gonna finish the bodice by doing the underarm seam. And to do this enclosed, once you have it turned right side up, you just spread apart the lining and the bodice on the front and the back, and you line them up just like that, making sure that that seam is lined up, and you'll press these open, and then you just sew straight across on the fabric right sides together and the lining right sides together, and then that will turn right side out, and you'll have an enclosed underarm seam once that's finished. So here we have the other bodices, each with the fabric, and I'm just gonna go ahead and finish clipping all the curves and the seams on these and turn them right side out, and we'll do all the underarm seams, and then we're gonna come back and attach the bodices to the skirts. All right, so now we're getting pretty close to the final step. We are gonna just attach the bodices to the skirts, and then just go ahead and finish the bottoms and add the Velcro, and you'll be done. So I have these bodices already pinned to the skirts over here, and I'm just gonna show you quickly on this one just how you would do that. So the bodices have been finished. The arms are nicely finished all the way. The seams are all enclosed everywhere, and then this bottom seam of the bodice is gonna be hidden in this elastic casing waistline seam. So we're just gonna take this and we're gonna center it on the skirt. So you can fold the skirt to find center front. You can mark that with a pin, or you can just eyeball it to your point on the center front neckline. So you'll notice on these that the skirt is a tiny bit longer, and that is so that you could fold in. It's about 1/4 of an inch to fold under, and it'll line up with the center back of the bodice. So you'll go ahead and pin that. And sometimes, depending on how you've cut and how you've gathered, you have a little bit more or a little bit less. Your bodice should stretch all the way across, and then you should have a little bit of an overhang on this side as well that you could fold under. So you're just gonna pin that, make sure that it's nice and flat all the way across. Then we're just gonna go ahead and straight stitch a 1/2 inch down for the 18 inch size to create the elastic casing on this waistband. So now we just go ahead and quickly finish that on all the dresses. Now at this point you could, if you wanted to, have switched to gray thread, just it might blend in a little bit more, but then at this point you would be switching your thread for every version of fabric that you have. So if you don't want white stitching on the blue fabric of this dress, you might want to switch to a light blue or something that blends in a little bit better. This is the part that might slow you down. But then you'd want the same thread if you were going to top stitch on this hemline. You'd want to make sure that you're using the same thing. So if you have a lot of the same fabric, you can switch your thread and do it all at one point, or if you're going to switch for each dress, just keep that in mind as you get closer to these final steps where the thread is going to show. So as we finish up the dress at this point, it's pretty much exactly like the pattern shows. We will just be finishing the back with a Velcro closure, which is standard. And then you can go ahead and hem the bottom in a circle. You can either leave the back all the way open so it just overlaps, or you can sew it up a couple of inches so that the dress is sewn and only opens on the top portion. It's up to you. But if you do that, then you could sew that center back seam and then sew the hem in one big circle, which has a little bit better finished look. So there you have all the steps required to kind of change the pattern a little bit when sewing the Salina dress as a large quantity item. So you can use these tips and techniques as you look at some of the other patterns and just think through how you can combine steps or change steps so that something becomes more streamlined. All right, well there you have it, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that it will help you figure out your process and really streamline where you're at when you're picking a pattern to sew in a large quantity.